Welcome back with If Civilization Reset, Episode 8. I'm sorry for the amount of time it took to upload this. I have stuff. So, as you can see, I've made some cities, I've made the alliances, and I made the capitals. Also, some provinces for the province map. Alright. Let's get started into this episode because it's going to be big. All right, so for today, we will start off in this region where the dark purple, turquoise, and vermilion nations are. Let me get rid of the layers. Okay, I'll just show a couple. So you see, the turquoise nation wants to border the vermilion nation. Why? Well, trade, of course. They don't want to have to go all the way around here and then into there. So they want to go just straight into there. So what do they do about it? Well, it's self-explanatory from here. They are going to have to work out a border deal. And I will do that right now. And this is what they come up with. So if I turn on the layer map, you can see the new land that they acquire. So the turquoise nation got all of this. Vermilion nation got a border with turquoise nation. And the dark purple nation gets the rest, which is this. And yeah, that's a straight border. And yes, straight borders are being integrated into the series. There will soon be many straight borders around this map. Alright, anyways, let's continue. Alright, but quickly, let's just take a look at the land they know and what they think the world is. So the white area they've explored, and then the grey area they know about. They don't know about. Wow, why did I say that? Alright, so I need to update this now because that is not accurate anymore. But it's okay, it's only a couple. Alright, they think the North Simvad is pretty wacky. They still haven't made contact with the Lost Tribe. I meant the Lost Purple Team Voyage when Nifro sailed all the way across the ocean and then landed here. And they couldn't support the colony, so it broke off. But they do know that there's this, but they haven't actually explored into it. So this is just the map. This is just the land they know about. Alright, let's go back. Now it's time for the spicy stuff. And that spicy stuff is taking place in the continent of the Corgis in. Alright, so what I'm was planning to do here is make an avian plague. This will drastically affect the world, most of it. Alright, so the effects are first felt around this region here. Say it's pretty foresty, there's a bunch of birds. Not much people living here. But still continues to quickly spread, going into Chaville, Vorect, and Suffrio. Yeah, I don't call these guys Mithridagus anymore. These are Suffrio. And due to this, these nations are feeling the negative impact on this. These guys would probably have the worst impact out of all the other nations because it started in their land. They quickly expanded. And yeah, Varek, the capital is right next to the bird area for Varekt, so that sucks. And this is when we move on to the country of Sufrio. So if you remember anything about them, it would be okay. It would be that they wanted to colonize this island, but then this faction broke off and they've been fighting for dominance over the island. But Suffrio never got to reclaim it. So, you know what this means. Another war on Chaigubad. With the advancements by Suffrio continue, and they managed to push the Chagubadians all the way out of their territory. And then even bigger pushing into the country. The battle for this city takes place, and it's a slow but swift Suffrio victory. They also managed to capture this city, and the fronts unite. So, and then from here, we see the Suffrio's navy being superior. They decide to surround around the Chagubadian territory and their seas, managed to make some landings and good gains. These two fronts eventually meet, and they start storming into the gates of the capital of Chagubad. It's a close victory, but outside help's on the way. The countries of the Orange Cindrilla Nation, the Chavillan Union, and Varek decide to interfere in the war. But before that, they almost took the city. But bad news, they are making gains again. And they swiftly cut the fronts into two again. Try to liberate this city, but can't at the moment. Try to reassert dominance in some areas, and they managed to do so. But the Suffrio troops managed to hide out in some lands. But it's a quick comeback as the Chaigubad team recaptures all their land and starts pushing into Suffrio. Then it comes. The Chargubadians strike and they immediately steamroll the Suffrio troops, pushing them out of the island as they know it, and also in Port Chibsey, which is also on the island. Why did I say that? Okay, then we can see some skirmishes happening on Suffrio's coast. These are landings made by the Chargubadians. And now Suffrio is in danger. Okay, and then now we see the Sindrillans intervene in the war. To take advantage of the collapsing Suffrio, they tried to occupy some lands. That includes here, well, just this area, really. They managed to make contact with the Chargubadians, but the Sindrillans were planning to take the land. They were planning to have all that land. All this. But they don't. Okay, they try to capture some more of the peninsula, and then Suffrio, something bad happens. The king is doing a speech. The audience has gathered up. It has its bodyguard near him. But then some assassin comes up and then he gets shot. And the king dies. So now Suffrio has to deal with their leader death, their king's death. And because of that, the king's eldest son becomes king. And now it's going to go downfall from here. Armies in Chaville make their way into Suffrio territory, and they manage to capture lots, in fact. We also see the same happening with Verrect, but to a pretty lesser extent. If only I can get the color. There we go. Just to a lesser extent. Still bad. And then chaos continues to emerge. The new king is trying to fend off the troops, but nothing is working. They try to recapture everything, and then immediately get beaten back, and this leads to the capitulation and surrendering of Suffrio as we know it. Now let's take a look at. In this peace treaty, we see the Suffrio kingdom get significantly reduced in size, with them losing land in here, an occupation zone from the Green Team here, and one from the Chavillan Union here. So we now basically have an entire nation Chargubad is ruled by entirely one nation. It's now just Chargubad, and it has an occupation zone here due to Sindrilla's intervention in the war. They have an occupation zone, but it overlaps with Chargubad's. As you can see, if I take off the province map, there is some dispute. So this could lead to some stuff in the future. I don't know. And then there's the Grey Nation. They're just a breakaway state and nothing else too important. But now we should address something major. Suffrio is suffering. Okay, so the new king of Suffrio decides to go to the king of Verect, asking him to relinquish their claims in Suffrio territory and return it. And of course, they are not going to accept that deal, and they keep the land for themselves. They do the same thing and go up to the king of Verect, and they refuse to give up their land's occupation zone as well. So now that leaves Suffrio suffering without access to this river and probably some abundant resources up here. Pretty bad. Man, this video duration's going pretty long. Let's just go over here and because I remember wanted to make an economic alliance between these three nations: Dark Purple Nation, Vermilion Nation, and Turquoise Nation. It's gonna be Circle. This guy may opt to join in, but we'll see in the future. There we go. Oh, there we go. There we go. Oh, there we go. Now we're moving on to the oligarchy of Zaluda. So you see, the oligarchy of Zaluda, it has its own religion apart from these two countries, Muba and Peblazoria. They have the same. This one has a different one, and it basically influences all these countries. Well, their religions stemmed from this one, but this one is the same as this one's. I'm not gonna have a religion map yet, but maybe. Okay, so we see Zaluda. Due to in its religion, it has some branches. In fact, there's a branch like in the southern part of the country. Let's say right here, it's kind of split, maybe, and therefore these guys want their own country. What does this lead up to? You know what this is leading up to. So we see in Zaluda some pockets of rebellion happen. Whoops. So we see some pockets of rebellion in Zaluda happen. The stem around this southern areas, make a landing in this island, capitulate this, and as well as the other one. And they continued to go around the place. You have some breakouts happening here, and then. And now the mission of Zaluda takes place. Zaludan troops enter, trying to cut the rebellion off and trying to get rid of them. but this only heightens tensions and also heightens rebellion. So, you know what this means? More rebellion. More people will fall to this rebellion. And it's almost the entire southern Zaluda region. Oh no. Okay. So it's almost falling, and because of that, we have outside powers taking opportunity of it. So Nifro Rojanin rebels pop up in Zaluda's colony because that colony borders these two colonies, and we see them making skirmishes on the border. Okay, and because of this, they're also getting plague over the. They kind of steal the resources there, and they might carry disease, and then they import it to their nation over here, and then they start having problems. Eventually, this entire colony basically falls into the hands of, well, Nafro. And it's here we see Mubanish intermission take place in this war. They try to take as much land as possible in order to save the Zaludan country, and it goes incredibly well. Only problem is rebellions here. Also, these guys, I said they have taken over the entire colony, so let's just make that official. And they now making a campaign in some of the islands. We see them do so in here and then on there. This is the only one that will survive for now. So the Gold Rebellion is going to continue trying to rebel. They managed to take all of the southern areas and try to make a landing on this island. One with Lou. And with that, that means Mubanish intermission will continue down south, and they'll reach into the rebellion. And then they start fighting off each other. Mubanish try to liberate this island, hopes to preserve it, and then these guys take advantage of it. So they'll try to capture these islands. They do so and make it onto the tip of here. This one. The rest will fall to the red country, and therefore the attempted saving of these guys. They try to capture as much land as possible, but then they just go into hiding here, and then basically they try to do more skirmishes, but they can't, and then that leads to a peace treaty. In this peace treaty, we see Zaluda's colony being split into two occupation zones, northern one being part of Rojana and the southern one being Nifro. And now Rojana has temporary access to this island, which they disputed for a while. Now, and then down south here, we see a new state here be formed. The L team just decided to carve that land out because they didn't really need it. It's just the scraps they have, and therefore that rebellion that was a different branch of religion. Maybe it was more of a revolution. But what? Well, those guys have their own country now. They choose their capital like relatively central, but close to the coast, kind of downwards. So yeah. And that's it for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it, and just dealing with stuff in my life. I have other responsibilities to do other than this stuff, but it's okay because not quit. I'm not quitting. I am fine to continue on this series and my channel as a whole. And I'll see you guys in the next episode, whenever that's going to be. Pretty late, I guess. Well, guess it's time to say Jack Flicks zooming out.